And then I think there's a couple more people in the waiting room. Rachel, if you can maybe just manage letting them in for me, that would be wonderful, and I'll get started. So thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to be here and spend this hour together talking about time management and study skills. We know this is a big topic that many of our students find a challenge with our busy lives and all the expectations that are placed on us. So hopefully we'll have some stuff that we can share with you and for you to take away with you. My name is Gemma Fraser, and I'm a counsellor and a learning strategist at Royal Roads, and I've been doing this work for about 7 years, I think now, and I love the work that I do, connecting with students and helping them find ways that they're going to be creating success for themselves. And I am absolutely thrilled to be joined with my wonderful colleague, Rachel Athy. And Rachel herself is a student. She's a student at Yorkville University studying counselling, and she has been with us since May doing a practicum, and it's just so wonderful to have her here. And she obviously has a deep understanding of juggling many competing priorities, and being a student and working and doing practicum and being a mom. So lots of pieces there. So she really deeply understands this stuff too. Before I get any further along, of course, I want to just take a moment to acknowledge, I know that people are joining in from different parts around the country, around the world, but the place that joins us all together is the beautiful lands of Royal Roads, which sits upon the ancestral lands of the Lekwungen and Kasepsin First Nations families. And it is on days like today where it's a beautiful fall day and I'm at home, I'm working from home, and it makes me a little bit sad that I'm not on campus because, and the fall, beautiful forest and the gardens just really are so vibrant in their oranges and reds and yellows, and I miss seeing that. So I hope that we can all be more on campus more often in the near future. And if you haven't been there, I hope that you manage to navigate your way there too sometime soon. But I feel so thankful that we get to live and learn and play and work on the lands of Lekwungen and Kasepsin First Nations families. So for our plan today, if you've been to any of our workshops in the past, or if you attend in the future, you'll soon get to know we always like to start with a check-in, and a little bit of a grounding exercise, which Rachel's going to lead us through. And then we're going to shift our focus to being intentional with our time. I've got some thoughts for you to think about that. I'm going to talk through the 4-step strategy for time management. We would not be doing time management justice if we didn't touch on procrastination, which is a big challenge for many of us, both in school and in life. And then we're also just really briefly going to touch on 3 strategies to help maybe be more efficient and effective as a learner. I've got some reading strategies I want to share with you. And then we'll end with a checkout, and hopefully we have enough time. We'll do another grounding exercise that Rachel will lead us. As I said before, I really invite you to chat in the chat box. Obviously, I'm going to guide and facilitate, but you folks all have lots of, I'm sure, brilliant ideas too. So if you have a moment of something you want to share in the chat box with your classmates, your colleagues, then please go ahead and feel free to do that. I think the more of us sharing together, the better. I'll try to divert my attention to the chat and to my talking, but Rachel's also going to be helping out with that too. So. Yeah, we'll see how we go. Right, let's take a moment just to check in with ourselves. You'll see on the screen here, I've got a bunch of goofy smiley faces, and I invite you just to take a moment to check in with yourself. Does one of these represent how you're feeling? You take the pencil at the top, maybe it should be probably at the top of your screen or maybe at the bottom of your screen. Take a pencil and draw a circle or a squiggle or something if one of these pictures represents how you're feeling today. Or maybe there's another one you can pop in the chat box. I think it's Matthew is feeling happy by the looks of it. So I invite you just to grab the pencil and start sharing on the screen. How are you feeling today? Just taking a moment, quiet moment, just check in. Great. I'm happy, I'm confident. And again, hope you can find the pencil. It's usually at the top if you hover over the little green thing. And someone's got their hand raised. Yes, Raf. Oh, you might need to turn your microphone on.
Where's the pencil again? I know I've been told that before, but I forgot.
That's okay. I have a struggle every time too, Raphael. So you usually, it's either at the top of your screen or the bottom, and you have to hover your mouse over, it's probably the little green bit. I think it says you're viewing my screen. If you hover your mouse over that, you should be able to click on it.
I see reactions, records, screen share, chat, participants. That's what I see. And then I see view.
Oh, I think I've got someone saying next to the green bar on top of the screen.
Yeah.
Next to the green bar. Oh, wait.
View options, annotate.
Ah, wonderful. Okay.
Thank you, Matthew.
Pencil. Now, where do you find the pencil? Can I just? Oh, I can draw automatically. Okay, cool.
Yeah, good, wonderful. Thank you. Look at that. Oh, you've just helped like 100 different people with asking that question, Raphael. I see lots more scribbling on the screen. When I do view options, I don't have the option to annotate. Now my screen's a little bit different to everybody else's, unfortunately. Rachel, can you answer Dave's question there? Raphael, I'm so thankful for you asking that question, because obviously others were sitting there trying to figure it out too. And I think with all the different platforms we're expected to use in school, it can get overwhelming. And I see a couple of people have indicated they're feeling overwhelmed already. So, oh gosh, and other people are feeling exhausted. So really appreciate you asking that question.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to clear all of that, and then I'm going to switch over to the other side of the screen where it says, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much stress are you feeling today? And this is another way we can just check in with ourselves, where maybe 1 is where we're not feeling any stress at all. It's like the most relaxed we've been. Like we might be laying on a beach or something. And the other end of the spectrum would be sort of up near the 5, where we're feeling completely overwhelmed and pretty strung out and not able to sort of maybe get some brain fog and not able to particularly go ahead. So in the chat box or on the screen, or just quietly to yourself, go ahead and check in and just see where we're at today. And there's no wrong or right or wrong answers with this. This is just a moment just to pause and check and see how we're feeling. So some 2.5s, some 3s, 3.5s. And so like people are just kind of hovering around that mid-range, I think is what we would expect to see at this time of day. And then you can take this in extension, right? We can check in with ourselves. If you're down to 1 or the 2, maybe the question you can ask yourself, why is that? Like, what are you doing that's helping you stay a little bit relaxed? Because you're doing something really wonderful. If you're up at the 3 or the 4, that's okay too. It's really normal for us to slip up to be feeling a little bit stressed. But maybe you could ask yourself, is there some small thing I could do to help bring me down half a notch or a notch? And really, if we do this check-in regularly and we find ourselves getting stuck up around the 4 or 5, that can be nice information too, and it can be a reminder that maybe we could take that as a sign that maybe we need to check in and do some one-on-one work with one of us counselors or learning strategists, or maybe you need to take a really good break from some of the stresses in your life. And what is it you need if you're getting stuck at that 4 or 5? So I offer these just as a little check-in that you can use anytime throughout your day to kind of, maybe see how you're doing. And I'm going to hand over to Rachel, and she's going to also give us just this moment to pause and ground ourselves in this moment. And she's going to take a couple of moments to lead us through a grounding exercise, and before we dive into the heady work of time management. So you okay for that, Rachel?
So just in your seated position, if it's comfortable to you, closing your eyes. And if it's not comfortable to you to close your eyes, maybe just find something to softly look at. And turning your gaze inwards and onto yourself and onto your body. Maybe just adjusting your posture here for a little bit more comfort. So Maybe rolling the shoulders back. If the feet aren't planted on the ground, maybe connecting them to the floor. And then finding a place for your hands to softly rest, maybe on your laps or towards your side. And then notice here if there's any tension in your face. See if you can soften your brows, your forehead. Maybe tension in your shoulders, your hips. See if you can settle in here to a soft, relaxed posture. We'll move through a few rounds of belly breathing here. So when you're ready, taking your hands and resting them down onto your belly with the elbows still resting softly at your sides. So first, just noticing your breath here, moving into the body, in through the nose and out through the nose as well. And then begin to draw that breath a little more fully into your belly. So as you inhale, the belly expands here towards your palms. And as you exhale, the belly sinks and moves gently back towards your spine. Maybe the low back softens. You inhale, breathing into the belly. And exhaling, letting the belly soften. Take 3 more rounds of belly breaths here in your own time. Inhaling gently into the belly space. And finding slow, complete exhales. Completing your last round of belly breathing. And then allowing your breath to return back to its natural rhythm. And when you're ready, just gently reopening the eyes and coming back into this space. That's just simple exercise you could do anytime, maybe between transitions or when you feel yourself a little stressed. We also have some mindfulness moments on Wednesdays on Zoom from 12 to 12:15. So you can sign up for that in LibCal. We just get together and do 15-minute practice in community over Zoom. And you can hang around and ask some questions. And yeah, we also have a mindfulness workshop coming up, and that's in the workshop list and calendar as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rachel. That was exactly what I needed, just to kind of help my workshop nerves just calm down a little bit. And I just really appreciate you and what you bring to this. And yeah, if anyone is looking for a midweek mindful moment, I can highly recommend spending that 15 minutes or so with Rachel on Wednesdays. It's a really lovely treat for the middle of the week. So thank you, Rachel. Once again, I'm going to hand over to you folks and invite you to grab that elusive pencil from wherever you found it last time. And let's have a look at this poll together. We're always curious about what students are finding challenging. And this poll, you can just circle one of these that reflects or type a letter in the chat box. But what's most challenging for you while you're managing your time as a student at Royal Roads? Is it getting your assignments done on time, or balancing school and work priorities, finding time for wellness and self-care, carving out time with friends and family, or something else? And I see there's going to be, not surprising, a bit of a mix of what people are experiencing. Someone's gone like all of it. It's all challenging. Yeah, we hear that quite a lot, and balancing different school and work priorities too. Yeah, so hard to find to find way to fit everything in, isn't it? And I remember actually our last practicum student was saying that when she started her program, her instructors at Yorkville were really adamant. They're like, okay, adding 20, 25 hours of school into your work, what are you going to let go of? And that kind of takes us aback when we're expected to let go of something. So we have so many competing priorities. But sometimes that's what we need to do. I really appreciate seeing your answers to this, and this probably won't be surprising to you. In the work that my colleagues and I do, these are some of the things that students bring to our sessions, just this sense of feeling overwhelmed and not sure how they're going to manage all of their assignments or competing priorities of work and family and school. And self-care, what? Who has time for that? Or friends and families that are being shifted to the side. So if you're experiencing these things, know that you're not alone, know that it's not uncommon, and hopefully by the end of today, we'll maybe have given you a couple of things that you can think about to take away and maybe shift this so that it feels a little bit more manageable. I will say as well, a lot of the stuff we're going to cover today is it's not rocket science, it's not new, but sometimes we need these reminders. We forget, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed, we forget some of the more, the things we've maybe used in the past or that worked well for us. So maybe there's something that'll just be an aha moment for you, or maybe there'll be a reminder moment for you. But we're just looking for just small ways we might be able to shift things a little bit so that we can help you feel like you're in control, feel like you're in the driver's seat of your education, if that makes sense. A week, 168 hours. I offer that. I used to actually ask that as a question, and interesting how I would get a range of different answers. And then the feelings around when we find out there's 168 hours in a week. For some people, it's like, wow, 168 hours, that's a ton of time. Woohoo, I didn't realize I had so much time. For others, it's like, oh my gosh, there's nowhere near enough hours. We need more hours in the week. And then people obviously fall along the spectrum. But no matter where you feel on that, it's kind of one of those reality things, is there are 168 hours in a week. And then, of course, we need to fit things into that. So it's a little bit like a bank balance in some ways, right? We only have however much money is in the bank, and we get to choose how we spend it. But it is a choice in many ways, and we get to make these choices. Sometimes things don't feel like they're a choice, sometimes things are less of a choice, but we start to think about how are we going to choose to spend this precious 168 hours that we each have this week. Because the time somehow just fritters away, it doesn't just kind of flows away from us. And when we're aware of all the things we need to do each week, we better understand how we're going to start to fit it all in, how we're going to create this puzzle that's going to come together so that it actually makes sense. And those can be hard questions to have, and sometimes it's easier just to hide our head in the sand and pretend we'll just manage, and that works for a time, but it usually creates more stress and it's a bit more overwhelming than actually asking ourselves some hard questions and looking at it, and taking that, trusting that we can look at it and make some good choices for ourselves. So some questions that you can start to ask yourself right now, as we get into this, when we're thinking about the week ahead. Does it look realistic? If you would actually be honest with yourself and think about all the things that you want to and need to get done, does it look realistic when we think about 168 hours? No, we also need to sleep. We also need to eat. We also need to, spend some time taking care of ourselves. Does it look realistic? And then we can ask ourselves a bit of a deeper question is, does the way you're choosing to spend your time align with your priorities? Now, it can feel like a bit of a loaded question for some people. It can feel a bit judgy sometimes, and it's in no way meant to. It can also feel a bit esoteric if you're just in sort of survival mode. But I really think it's worth spending a little bit of time thinking about it. What are our priorities right now? And is there a way we can utilize that to help us get the most out of our time and actually feel good about the way we're spending our time? So what do I mean about priorities? Well, there's this wonderful TED talk by Laura Vanderkam. And what I really like about her talk is she makes the point that our language matters and the words we use really matter. And she really encourages people to talk about, use the words, it's not a priority right now, as opposed to, I don't have time. I don't have time to do that. I don't have time for anything. When we talk about I don't have time, we're really talking from a deficit model. And we're also like kind of thinking, well, if only we could wave a magic wand, we'd have more time, which we can't do. We only have 168 hours. So then we really have to start thinking about, well, what are our priorities? And we're not necessarily saying no to something forever, but we're actually just saying, this is my priority right now. And I'm going to put my effort and energy into this because this is a greater priority than some of the other things that I have. Now, priorities look different. Everybody's priorities are going to look different. And so some of the ways we can think about this is, are there some things that we're doing for ourselves that are priority? Are there some things that are for our work that are priority? Maybe there's some things for family that are priority. So what are the things that are priority for you right now, rather than saying I don't have time, but shifting it so we're putting it in the positive of that's not a priority, but this really is. So this is a way that we can start to talk about time management, because really it doesn't come down to measuring the minutes and the hours and minutes and seconds so much as it comes about shifting how we show up in that 160 hours during the week. One way we can start to do that is we can start to use a 4-step strategy for time management. So once we've kind of given some thought and some space to what our actual priorities are, or where our deeply seated values lie, right? What are the things that are most important to us? Then we can start to manage our time in 4 steps. So we can start with a long view, which will be sort of the 2 to 3 month kind of time frame, or maybe the length of course if you're just at the start of a new course. Then we can break it down to the week ahead and really start to hone in on the things that are most important to accomplish during any particular week. And then we go even smaller with a plan for just one day at a time, and really managing what we accomplished, what we set out to do in each of our days. And then we want to break it down even smaller to micromanage and get the most out of our days. So I'm going to walk us through each of these steps. And it's interesting because some of us are really good at different ones of these steps. Like I know some people are really good at micromanaging a day, but they haven't taken the time to look at the long plan. So they might get a lot done today, but it might not be the most important stuff that aligns with their priorities. Or flip side of it is, I know some people who can plan out the long, they can plan a year ahead, but when it comes to actually getting stuff done in the day-to-day, they really struggle. So it's okay if you're kind of resonating with that. It's really normal for us not to be very good with this stuff, and it does take a lot of practice, but if we practice it more, then we can get better at it, which is the good news, I guess, with things that we can practice. Start with the long view. As I said, you can think about this either at the beginning of one of your courses, if you're just starting a new course, or you can think about it just in the next couple of months. And Natalie just shared, too much time planning and not enough time acting. I feel that way too sometimes. I feel really comfortable to plan sometimes, and yet it stops me from acting on it. So so I hear you on that one. So we're thinking about the long view. What we want to think about is, what are all the really important things that you want to put into your agenda? So if you haven't already done this, you should map out every single assignment due date, because then we can see the entirety, and we can see things like, oh, wow, I've got 3 assignments due that week. Maybe I need to ask for a little bit fewer work assignments, or maybe I need to talk to my instructor and see if I can get one of them handed in a couple of days later. What do you need in that time? Or maybe you look at your agenda and go, wow, I'm going on holidays for 2 weeks in a month's time. I want to be doing my schoolwork during that time. So maybe I'm going to work really hard in the weeks leading up to it and fit more in so that I can really enjoy those 2 weeks vacation that I have planned. So we're really looking at this longer term view, so we can start to really get a sense of what do you need to accomplish in that time frame. Looking much more than 2 or 3 months out isn't usually that beneficial, because so much changes in our lives. We can have sort of hopes and dreams and things we work towards in the longer plan for sure, but with this kind of planning thing, I'm really talking about the next sort of couple of months, not much more than that. Then we want to really start to look at, as I said, those moments where we might be too busy or too overwhelmed, and start to think, are there some ways that we might negotiate that a little bit differently? Are there some things we could maybe do a little bit sooner to give us a bit more space and space ourselves more evenly throughout our work, throughout our calendar weeks? Other things you may need to say no to. And that doesn't feel good, but saying no sometimes is the biggest gift we can give ourselves. And oddly, sometimes it's a big gift we can give to other people too. There's a lot of pressure on us to say yes. There's a lot of pressure on us to get together, and sometimes we what we really need is just some extra time just to be. So if you maybe think about that too, sometimes it can be a gift. Are you also, as you've looked at your long view, does it look so cram-packed? There's no time for families, no time for friends. You're just putting your head down and just going. Maybe that's not a particularly healthy balance either. So again, just having a look at that and say, okay, is this realistic for the next 3 months? And if there's no time for a space for priorities, family, friends, etc., then I would suggest that maybe that's not realistic for 3 months' time, right? We can maybe do it for a couple of days, but not for longer term. And again, just remember to keep your priorities in mind, because if we know what our priorities are, it makes it easier to say, yes, I'm going to do that because it's a priority, or no, I'm not going to do that right now because it's not a priority right now. So with keeping that front and center as we're going through this planning practice and checking in with ourselves, is it a priority or not? Is it a priority or not? So that was step 1. Then we're going to bring it a little bit back closer in. And step 2, where we're going to break it down and look at just the week ahead. I can't remember where I heard this, and I wish I could, but I'll share it. It's not mine, but somewhere along the line, I heard this person talking, and they talked about their hour of power on Sunday. And I think it was like an American, it was a vision of an American, like, power person kind of doing it. But it really resonated with me. This idea of setting aside an hour on a Sunday, late afternoon, hour of power, get yourself set up for the week ahead. And just really taking some time to block it out. So if hour of power doesn't resonate with you, that's totally fine. But just thinking about, what do you need to do to start to plan out your week ahead? What are the things that you must do? What are your work commitments, your family, classes you might want to attend or have to attend, yoga lessons that you review are really important to you? So I'm looking at Rachel, and she's a yoga teacher, so that's why that yoga came in. Are there assignments you really need to work on? So when are you going to do your work? And then the most crucial part here is unscheduling some time. For students, that can feel completely backwards to unschedule some of your time when you're trying to fit school in. But one of the things that I really love for students to understand is that we need 2 types of brain spaces for school. One is really focused time. And I think we all understand that when we're sitting, typing on the computer, writing up our assignments, we're reading our texts, we're reading our assignments, we're delving into research. Like, that's really focused school time, and it's super important, obviously. The other part of school time is actually complete opposite of that. And it's called the diffused mode of thinking. And it's where we're unscheduled. We're not focusing on our schoolwork. We're not actually focusing on anything except just letting our brain relax. Most of us have had an experience with this, with things like we'll be trying to write an assignment or trying to get the words to come out, and we can't, and we give up, and then we go for a walk, or we start doing the dishes, or we take a shower. And then somewhere along the line during that walk or that shower, we go, oh, the pieces are starting to fit together. You start to see the connections, where I start to see how the words might flow. And that's that diffused time, that unscheduled time is so important for school. So if your week is too full, I can't emphasize it enough. Like, you need some white time in your calendar, because your learning brain needs it. So just kind of really think about that. How are you going to put that in? And your health and wellness too, because when our brains get fried, we're not taking care of our health and wellness. Our brains aren't designed to work that way. So really thinking about flipping it on its head when you say you don't have time, when you find yourself saying, I don't have time for taking care of myself, flipping that on its head and saying, you don't have time not to take care of yourself. Like, you really have to, so that your brain can do the learning and do the thinking that you're really asking of it. Okay. I'm talking a lot. I'm aware of that. I'm sorry. And obviously I get excited about some things, and white space in people's calendars is one of them. So really look for the white space. Then we want to dial it back. Step 3 is dialing it back even further, where we're just going to look one day at a time. It's usually best to do this late afternoon or evening. So for example, I would do this today. Before I finish my day, I'm going to look ahead to tomorrow and see what I have to do, and start to map out what my day tomorrow might look like. If you can, I know this sounds really old school, but if you can use a paper agenda, that's it's a different connection than typing stuff into our phone or our computer. So if you can have a paper agenda and start to actually write down the things that you want to do, and preferably in what order with time blocks, and really being specific. So I've given the example there about, oftentimes I see students say, well, I'm going to do school from 4 till 6. And that's way too broad. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to write my paper. Still too broad. We really want to give ourselves something really specific to do in each of the time blocks, because the more specific we are, the more likely we're to do it, because we've just taken a barrier away from our brain, because we know exactly what we're going to do. The other thing with doing this today for tomorrow, we're giving our brain all night to think about it and all night to kind of go, yep, I got this. I'm going to get up tomorrow and I'm going to follow the plan. And sometimes we fall off and we don't follow the plan, and that's okay. We're at least giving ourselves a chance of having a plan and sticking to it. And we really, 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 really want to avoid saying, I'm going to give myself all day to do school. It's not realistic to do school all day. And usually what it means is people end up feeling like you're spending all day, but not actually getting much done, because it needs a specific beginning time and a specific ending time. For our learning brains to be effective, we really need to shut everything down at a specific time and actually make that happen, so that we can diffuse, so that we can rest, we can recuperate. So giving yourself a stop time as well as a start time is really important when we're planning the days ahead. And the final step in, yes, thanks, Laurie. There are studies that show that napping is a really great benefit of our learning capacity. So it feels so counterintuitive, but it's so important to do this. So the final step in this is micromanaging our schoolwork. So what do I mean by that? I mean, we start to think about ourselves as individual learners, and we start to really get to know ourselves about when we're going to do the best work as a learner. So when do you tend to do your best work, and can you organize your schedule so that you do it when you're your freshest? Not always possible, but let's start to ask these questions. Who will you be accountable to? So we know that people tend to do things and get things done if they're accountable to someone else. Works for most of us. So who are your accountability buddies? Do you need to connect with someone in your program and say, hey, we've got this assignment that's due in 2 days. Can we be accountable to each other? Can we have a conversation around it? Or is it a partner that you can be accountable to? You commit to getting your assignment done by Friday night so you have the weekend free. Maybe that's someone you can be accountable to, but who are you going to be accountable to? You can also start to think about, where do you tend to be most productive? Obviously, this last year and a half, this question has been more fraught than ever, and obviously you can't always have the ideal locations, but is there a way you can orchestrate your space that you can create a productive space for your learning? And then this point, I've kind of hammered this down in the last slide, but before you sit down to do your schoolwork, you should know exactly what you're going to do so you don't waste valuable time, right? So if you know you're going to sit down from 4 till 6 doing schoolwork, specifically, what are you going to do? Are you going to read the journal articles from page this to this that your instructor asked you to? Or are you going to write the introduction to your paper that's due next week? What is it exactly that you're going to do? So you just start into it. And then, of course, when we're micromanaging our schoolwork, without sounding like someone's mom, we really want to turn your distractions off and move them away. I know many of us struggle with social media, obviously, is a thing. And I don't want to belabor that point, except to share a study that I read recently, which I thought was really interesting. Some researchers studied high school students. I think it was high school students or early years of college students. And they measured how far away a student's phone was. So here's my phone, it's right with me. And they measured how far away a student's phone was from them in distance. And what they found was that the further away the phone was when the student was trying to do the schoolwork, the further the phone away the phone was, the better the grades, the better the learning. So there's something about even proximity of the phone. So I always used to think just turn it off or put on silent. And I think that we can go even one step further than that. We can actually move it from the room or give it to a friend to take somewhere else. Or I had a student once used to lock it in the trunk of their car while they were writing their major projects. So be creative with this, right? Because it actually matters. It matters more than I think we want to admit sometimes. So think about it. I'm not sure what's going to work for you, but it's something to think about as you explore how you're going to get in the seat of your own learning. Thanks, Raphael, for the laugh there. Throw it in the river and get straight A's. If only it was that simple, right? I don't know how everybody's feeling, but I know in the work that we're doing, we're seeing a lot of people who are stressed right now. Like, I mean, as I said, I've been doing this for a while and we're seeing people are more stressed, I think, now than we've been in, many years gone by. And it can be really, really hard to get going if we're feeling stressed or if we're feeling depressed. So I wanted to share just these thoughts around this because I know it's real for many students. But one of the things we can do is if we're feeling like we're struggling to get started on school, we actually take ourselves away from school and actually start moving our body. So we actually start to get some feeling of momentum. So, any kind of momentum makes it easier for us to then progress. Think of a tractor or something. It's really hard to get a tractor going when it's stopped still. But if it's already moving, then it can kind of keep going a little bit more easily. So we just want to get our bodies moving a little bit. And then we just want to identify one small task to focus on. The smaller the task, the better. If you're feeling really stuck, your motivation is really low. If motivation is low, we want to find the smallest thing we can focus on and then just do it. Or if we can't think of a small task or a way to break our task down, then we can set a really short time limit. So like a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, just something really small that we can stick to. Because one of the things that is a misconception amongst most of us is that we sometimes wait because we're waiting for motivation to come and we'll just do it when we feel motivated. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Motivation comes from doing, not the other way around. So if we're waiting for motivation to strike, we're going to be waiting for a very long time. But if we start somehow getting a little bit of momentum, start doing something, then we're more likely to feel that kick of motivation come along. So if you're struggling with motivation or high levels of stress or feelings of depression, know that you don't have to go through this alone as well. I'm going to show at the end how you can connect with us and get some support to help you out, because this is, there's nothing worse than feeling debilitated with your schoolwork and it just keeps piling up and up. So please consider booking an appointment if that kind of is how you're feeling, so we can help you get unstuck. I know I've been doing a lot of talking, so I want to hand over to you folks and invite you to chat in the chat box, because whether we're motivated or not, sometimes procrastination comes and just gets in the way and derails us. It happens to all of us. It's something sometimes we joke about when we're procrastinating, but actually it's real, and a lot of people suffer when we're procrastinating. And I think we don't talk about the suffering enough. I think sometimes we just say, I'm just procrastinating, but I think it's actually very real and it's painful. And the worse it goes on, the more painful it gets. So I have some thoughts around how we can manage procrastination. I've done a lot of reading about it, I've done a lot of research on it, and a lot of thinking about it, but I also know that you folks probably have some tools and tricks that I'd love to hear, and maybe we can compare notes, but let's see if we can share together in the chat box. What are some of the things that help you manage procrastination? Remember, we can all learn from each other. So if you have a tip or a tool or a strategy that helps you manage procrastination, please share it while I take a sip of water, and I'm sure everybody would really appreciate to hear from anyone. Love it, Laurie. Thank you. Making a focused list of items that need your attention right now. Great. let yourself procrastinate sometimes too if the deadlines aren't there. Great, thank you. Ooh, Study Bunny app. See, this is why I love asking this question, because I've not heard of that one before, but I'm going to write it down. Study Bunny, love it. Study Bunny. And Dave has, yeah, 50 minutes on and 10 minutes off. I love hearing those set times with the break as well. A Focus Keeper, great, another great app to share. Some people got these setting the study specific times, 45 on, 15 off, great. It's really wonderful. Anyone got any other ideas? Those are great ideas, and particularly like the apps that you've shared, because I didn't have those. Oh, great. Listening to certain specific types of music just to kind of keep you in the zone. Good. Everybody's got a little bit of a different strategy for this. Beautiful. Rewarding yourself. Also good to end on a good note. Yes, I love that idea too. Shyla, I think it is. You know, ending on something positive so we don't have this kind of negative reaction about doing the work again in the future. Great. Yeah, and accountability buddies too to compare progress with. This is so wonderful. You're making my job really easy, because you've pretty much covered a lot of the suggestions that I wanted to go over with you. But let's slip onto this next slide here and go through some things together. So, and as I said, some of these you've already come up with, so I won't go over them too long, but the first one is the 5-minute plan. And I alluded to this before when I said just starting really small. So the 5-minute plan is when we're feeling ourselves procrastinating around something, we just make an agreement with ourselves that we'll do the task that we're avoiding. We'll just do the task for 5 minutes. After the 5 minutes is done, if we want to stop, totally free to stop. But after the 5 minutes, if we're feeling okay about it, then we'll go on. Maybe we'll do another 5 minutes, or maybe a 10-minute chunk and see how we feel. But we're just starting with 5 minutes. If we do the 5 minutes and it's still painful, we want to stop, that's okay. We just celebrate that we've done 5 minutes. The next technique is called the Pomodoro Technique. It's a fancy name for something that several people in the chat box have already alluded to. I think I have a slide on it where I'll go into that in more detail. Basically setting a timer and then taking a break, setting a timer, taking a break. Writing our deadlines down on paper and keeping it in view. I think someone also mentioned, Laurie mentioned that. Another positive way we can do this is number 4 is start an I did list. Most of us are really good at creating to-do lists and do more and more, and they get longer and longer. And sometimes at the end of a day, we can instead flip that on its head and start an I did list. What did you actually do today? And start to celebrate all that you managed to accomplish. Really small things, big things. Just start to really celebrate what you did accomplish rather than beating ourselves up for all the things we didn't do. Asking support from an accountability buddy, that's really important way of managing procrastination. I think a couple of people have suggested that. Number 6 is interesting, surrounding ourselves with doers. When I was in my undergraduate degree, I'll show this. When I was in my undergraduate degree, my first 2 years were pretty dire. I actually procrastinated on just about every assignment that was given to me, and I handed in either 2 minutes before it was due or abysmally late. Almost every single assignment. It was just awful. And looking back now, I can understand why. But what was really interesting to me was my 3rd year, things started to really shift around for me. And I actually started to hand things in on time or early, which was unheard of for me. And one of the things that really mattered and made a difference there was I actually shifted the people I hung out with. The people I hung out with in 1st and 2nd year, procrastinating, they didn't care. They didn't care that things were handed late, just the way they moved through the world. And that's okay. But my 3rd year, these people I surrounded myself with were actually doers, and they were just doing the work. They just got it done. It was unacceptable to them to not do the work. And it kind of helped me to shift my way of being too. So we can't always find doers, but if we can, and that's a possibility, then maybe start to hang out with them a little bit too. We talked about breaking tasks down into tiny pieces. That can be really helpful. Think about getting yourself in the driver's seat of your learning. So you're here, your instructors are telling you what to do, and you're giving your assignments, giving your readings, but really, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do to get yourself in the driver's seat of your learning? How are you going to get the most out of this degree that you're spending this time and this money on? We can think about as well, rewarding ourselves if we finish something early, and someone else mentioned rewards. Think about this, we're often quite punitive. If we finish things late, we beat ourselves up, but how about we reward ourselves when we finish early? Maybe setting a date with a friend or a family member if we get something done. And then number 10 is actually, of all the things we can think about for procrastination, is actually practicing self-compassion. I'm going to forget his name. I'm so sorry. The world expert in procrastination actually points this out. He's like, we can have all of these strategies and all of these tools, but the one fundamental thing that is different between people who overcome procrastination and those people who struggle with it for their whole life is whether they exercise self-compassion. That really surprised me. I was, I'm thinking there's got to be a tool, there's got to be a trick, there's got to be something that helps me, deal with procrastination. And at the end of the day, it's how I speak to myself about it. How kind am I that I procrastinated and now I'm going to try again to do that task? Because if I beat myself up, I guess I'm just making myself feel worse and I'm never going to get to that task. So it's really interesting if we think about that as a framework too. We all procrastinate sometimes, but how kind are we? And can we practice some kindness to help us with this? Okay, I'm going to skip over this slide because this is the Pomodoro Technique. Super simple. Set a timer for 25 to 35 minutes and focus on the task at hand. When the time is up, take a 5-minute break and take a sip of water, stretch, make some tea, look out the window, move your body, and then come back and set another timer. And if you haven't practiced this before, highly recommended if you have a specific task that needs doing. Doesn't help for the diffused thinking we're talking about before, but for any tasks that you really need to get done, try this, setting a timer. It can be really quite brilliant for helping us move through stuff. Check time. Okay. There's a lot, hey? There's a lot to fit into an hour. And I'm hoping that, maybe you'll have just one or two things to take away. I want to just give some, very quickly, some strategies for reading and studying. I think most of us kind of fumble our way to becoming good students, but there are maybe some shortcuts we can take to actually get to that point where we're effective learners. And I want to share just these 3 methods with you today, really briefly. Some of you may already know this, others for whom school is a newer thing, this might be new. So let's just go through it. First one is the KWL method, and that stands for what I know, what I want to know, and what I learned. So as adult learners, you already know a bunch of stuff before you come into your program. So before you do any of your school work or your readings, your assignments, you really want to start to ask yourself, what do I already know about this? Because maybe that will mean that you don't need to read quite so deeply or quite so much about a topic because you already have a really great grounding in it. And then we want to ask ourselves, what do I want to know? And maybe we challenge ourselves to learn something new if you already know a bunch of stuff about something, but what do you want to know? When you sit down to read an article, why are you reading it? And the correct answer isn't because my instructor told me to. The correct answer is because there's something from it that you want to get. And maybe you want to get something out of it for an assignment that you're going to be writing, or maybe you want to get something out of it because you want to deepen your knowledge. Maybe there's a gap in your knowledge and you want to fill that gap. But what do you want to know? And then once we've done the reading, done the studying, we take a moment, we pause, and we reflect on what did I just learn? Okay, so really that reflection part is where the true learning comes, where we actually take the knowledge that we integrate, we've read or heard, and we integrate it into the learning center of our brain, that reflection piece. So that's the KWL method. Super simple, really good if you tend to drift and get bored with school. Okay, start to think about these 3 questions and use this method because it might help you stay engaged. The second method is really specific for what's called active reading. So active reading is different to like reading a novel or sitting at the beach, just kind of, flicking through a magazine. Active reading is with really intentional reading. And this strategy is called the SQ3R. And it stands for survey, question, read, recall, and review. So maybe the easiest way to talk about the SQ3R is if we pretend that our instructor has said to us, I want you to read chapter 3 of the textbook this week. So that's okay. Most of us don't really feel that thrilled about that because textbooks are often quite dry, a little bit boring. So we can use the SQ3R to really help us get into this. So step 1 is survey. So we want to have a look at the chapter and kind of get the lay of the land. We do that by looking at the introduction, if there is one, and read the introduction. We skip over everything else and look and see if there's a conclusion. And if there's a conclusion, we read the conclusion. Now, if we do just that, we read the introduction and the conclusion, we should have a good idea about what we're going to encounter in the rest of the chapter. Then we go back to the beginning, we look at any subheadings and read the subheadings, any words that are highlighted, any graphs or pictures, and have a look at those. So we're really just getting the lay of the land. And that should give you a really good sense of whether you need to, how deeply you're going to go into this reading once you've done that. So step 2 is question. And again, like the last strategy I talked about, the first question we want to ask ourselves is, what do I already know about this topic? And secondly, what do I hope to learn by reading this article or chapter? What do I hope to learn? So what do I know? What do I want to know? So we're actually asking our brain to be engaged in the reading so we can read effectively and efficiently, not in a really slow slog. Because sometimes when we ask ourselves these questions, we realize we actually know a bunch of stuff already. So maybe we don't need to read so deep. We can just skim it. Or maybe we can just focus on certain sections that are really relevant to us or our assignment. We can just kind of skip over the rest or skim the rest. Is there a way that we can use this reading to help us with an assignment or a forum post that we have to do? So we're actually really actively looking for how we're going to make this useful to ourselves. And then we have the recall parts. Once we've read it, skimmed it, or delved into a particular section, we test ourselves by recalling, what do we actually just learn? What do we actually just read? Bonus points if you say it out loud, just another way for our neural network to kind of make sense of what we're learning. And then the very final step is to review it, and that's where we make some notes. And again, I know this is old school, but if you take notes with pen and paper, most of the studies show that you'll retain the information more clearly and more for longer than if you type up the notes. But that's a personal preference, but the studies would show pen and paper tends to be a better learning tool for that particular thing. So that's the SQ3R. So again, hopefully this, as I've talked about this, you realize that you don't have to read everything. In fact, you shouldn't be reading everything. You should be really starting to pick and choose what you read and being intentional with it so that you have more time to do other things in your life. And finally, I want to just briefly touch on how to read a journal article, because for some students who are been doing school for a long time, you might have already figured this out. If you're new to school, maybe nobody's ever told you about this. I'll just really go through this briefly. But I will say that if all of this is new to you, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know any of this was possible, then really think about booking an appointment with one of us to have a chat about some of the learning strategies that might help you be an effective and efficient learner, because this is the work we love to do as well. So yeah, come join us. So reading a journal article, we always start with the abstract, which is these little parts, about 150 words usually, and just read that. And once you've read the abstract, you should know everything. You should know kind of what the paper's about. And then from that, you get to decide whether you really want to read the paper or not. Is it going to be helpful or useful or not? If it's not, don't read it. If you think it might be, then we want to start deciding how we're going to read the article. As odd as this seems, you want to skip over everything and read the discussion and the conclusion. And the reason for that is most journal articles are someone's research that they've done. And the really meaty part, the unique part, comes from the discussion and the conclusions that they've drawn. So skip over everything and read the discussion and conclusion, because that's where the sort of really juicy parts come from that we want to know. Then when you've done that, you stop and you ask yourself, would it be helpful or necessary to read anymore? And if it is, skip back to the beginning and read the introduction and the literature review. Those can be really helpful as well. Would it be helpful, necessary to read more? If yes, then you can start reading from the beginning and read the whole paper. More often than not, though, we really don't have to read the results and the methodology to get what we want. But if we're really wanting to delve deeply into a paper, then of course we really want to read the whole thing. But if we're just needing to get the gist of it, we can read it in this way and get the majority of what we need from it. So that's how to read a journal article. Okay. How are we going for time? I think we are almost out of time, so I'm going to skip this. I see Rachel nodding in the thing there. I know. Time management, right? All right. I have given you so much information and I've talked at you for an hour. So I imagine you must all be exhausted right now. So I won't be surprised if everybody takes the pencil and circles exhaustion on the screen. But really, just all joking aside, invite you just to take a moment to again just check in with yourself and how are you feeling right now in this moment? As we're heading out of the day and into the evening, or maybe none of those fit, maybe there's another word that aligns with how you're feeling. And feel free to chat that, pop that in the chat box. With the pencil, with the chat box. And then we can also check in with ourselves on our stress level. Oh, Laurie, make cookies and dinner. Oh, that's so amazing. I love that multitasking. Good for you. I like that you're moving around to do that too instead of just sitting in front of the screen. It's wonderful. What about on a scale of 1 to 5? Again, just checking in with yourself, either on the screen or in the chat box, or just quietly to yourself. How's everybody's stress levels doing right now? 2, 2.5. Great. Personally, I'm at probably a little bit of a 3 right now. Just because it's the end of a busy day. Probably need to go and do a grounding exercise or some deep breathing to really help me relax some more. That can be an important thing to do and to acknowledge. So I appreciate everybody sharing how you're doing today in this moment. And finally, of course, I mentioned several times that maybe you got what you needed from today. Hopefully you got what you needed from today, but maybe you're left with some more questions or maybe some curiosity, and maybe you would like to connect with us and explore some of this stuff or explore something else that's going on in your life more deeply. So this is my wonderful team that I work with, and we work with students on anything to do with counselling matters, so life and emotions and things that come up that get in the way of being a student. We also work on how to be an effective student. So either doorway is wide open to students who would like to come and connect with us. And you can book an appointment online. That's probably the easiest way, from the website of LibCal. Or you can email us at counselling@royalroads.ca and we'll get back to you with some appointment times. Or you can phone us and leave a message. We don't usually pick up just because we're in sessions, but we will phone you back and schedule a time for us to talk. So that's, I think, everything that we have to offer for today. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just stop recording and then sorry, make sure